So Carolyn, all right, it is 1 o'clock. I am calling the May 16th, 2022 meeting of the Albemarle County Architectural Review Board to order. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with ordinance number 20-A16, an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. Quorum is present. Architectural Review Board members present electronically are Frank Hancock, Tara Matsuno, and myself, Chris Henningsen. Opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County website at the Albemarle County calendar. The public has real-time audiovisual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone. Both is provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the county's website. This online meeting is a public record and subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. All speakers, when it is your turn to speak, please first state your name for the record. Everyone who is participating today, it is good practice to mute your microphone until it is your turn to speak. Applicants who are making presentations, note that your presentation is limited to a total of 15 minutes, which you can divide among your team members. Carolyn will let us know when the 15 minutes are up. Do any ARB members have anything to disclose?
No.
I do not.
Okay. Great. Carolyn, are there any members of the public that want to make a comment about a project that is not on the agenda for review?
No, sir, not at this time.
All right, great. So there are no consent agenda items today. There is one regular review item today. It will be presented by Margaret Malashevsky from the Planning Division of Community Development. First item is ARB 2022-32, Chipotle final site plan. Margaret, you got it. Go. Thank you.
Trying to get my presentation started. Are you able to see the slide? Just the slide? Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Okay, this is a proposal to replace an existing vacant restaurant building in the Hollyme Town Center with a new structure to house a Chipotle restaurant. The building is located just north of the PetSmart store and it's south of the Target store and Target parking lot. And it's immediately adjacent to Route 29. The existing building at the site, oops, I need to make one more adjustment. Hold on just a second. There we go. Okay. The existing building at the site was approved by the ARB as part of Area B in the Hollyme Town Center. The ARB completed a review of the initial site plan and architectural design for the Chipotle proposal at the December 6, 2021 meeting. The action at that time was to recommend approval of the initial plan, and there was a list of comments and requests for changes or additional information on both site and architectural issues to be submitted with the final site plan. Those comments and the changes made to address them were included in the staff report, and I'll give you a summary of all that right now. One of the architectural issues identified in the December review was that the EPIS band at the top of the wall appeared to be top heavy, and it was recommended that it should be reduced in height or otherwise revised to reduce the scale. In the current proposal, the height of the band has been reduced by 2 feet, and that eliminates that top heavy appearance and resolves that issue. Also noted in the December review were the accent elements that were included in the design. And those were metal panels at the drive-through window tower and a series of metal tubes on the same wall. In that review, we thought that the charcoal colored metal for the drive-through window tower would be compatible with other colors in the shopping center, but we asked for more information to clarify the appearance of the metal tubes. In the current submittal, the metal tubes are now in the same dark charcoal color as the drive-through window tower. And the amount of that dark color that's now proposed calls into question the appropriateness of the color, as well as the type of material. An online search showed multiple materials and colors that have been used for drive-through window features in other Chipotle restaurants. An alternate may be available that provides a more coordinated appearance in this particular location. Another issue identified in December was the design of the extension of the screening wall that runs parallel to the entrance corridor street. The existing wall has a series of windows that should be retained. And although the drawing notes that the existing wall will remain, it doesn't show the windows. And we want the windows shown just to avoid any confusion. There could be other ways to do it than to add the windows to the actual drawing, maybe better notes or an addition of a photograph with notes could resolve it, but we want to make sure that there's no confusion that those windows should be retained. In December, we noted that the proposed landscape plan did not show the full extent of landscaping that was previously approved along the frontage. The note has been added to the current plan to state that all that planting will remain. We've recommended, however, that the plan be revised to show tree protection fencing along the entrance corridor to ensure protection of those plants. And then there was one other minor landscape issue. We recommend a second look at the planting size for the Mount Vernon English laurel that's proposed. Currently, the proposed planting size appears to be the mature size for the plant. Previously, we noted several technical lighting issues that needed to be revised to meet county requirements. There's one outstanding issue is that the finish for the light fixtures and poles has not been identified. That still needs to be added to the luminaire schedule. And we've asked for clarification regarding the illumination of the metal tubes. Finally, although a separate application is needed for any new signs, we noted in the staff report that the wall sign illustrated in the drawings and photograph show a sign type that does not meet the approved comprehensive sign plan for the shopping center. The drawings submitted for this ARB application show a sign on the elevation that isn't visible at all from Route 29. And that's what we would refer to as the west elevation. Let's see, I think I got that. There we go. And that one doesn't require ARB review or approval. The sign on the wall facing PetSmart may have a lesser degree of visibility, and you may want to discuss that. But the sign facing the Target store will be clearly visible. Let me back up for a minute here. Skipped over something. Since the time that the staff report was completed, we have received sign applications for this building. And those applications show a sign on the elevation that faces Target in addition to the sign locations that were shown in the ARB submittal. As indicated in the December review, the sign design is not consistent with the approved comprehensive sign plan for the Hollyme Town Center. That comprehensive sign plan calls for channel letters with red faces mounted directly to the building. And the proposed design has white channel letters on a background panel with both face and halo lighting. So we would like to have your direction on the signs today, even though they're not getting approval today. We would like your directions that we can process the sign applications more efficiently and not have to return to the ARB in the future to resolve the issue. So today you're taking action on the final site plan and architecture. Our recommendation is for approval with the conditions listed in the staff report. I can pull up a more readable list of comments when you're ready, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, great. Thank you, Margaret. So questions for staff. Frank Hancock, do you have any questions?
No, I don't think so. Maybe, Margaret, just clarify what you're looking for from us for the sign. I know we don't have all the materials for the comprehensive sign plan in front of us. I don't want to be out of line with that.
Sure. The issue is that we can't, staff can't approve the sign applications as they are currently proposed because they don't, the sign types, the sign colors, and the sign illumination does not match what the comprehensive sign plan calls for. On the elevation that faces PetSmart, you may want to discuss that the amount of visibility there. You can see in this, in the photo in the lower left-hand corner, this aerial view. This is the existing building, and it's very close to the PetSmart building. With the proposed building, there's a wider gap there, so there would be more visibility of that sign. But the sign is on sort of on the inside end, if you will.
Is it close to the, I guess, the western facade.
It is. It's at the what we would call west end. If you assume 29 runs north-south, the sign on the south elevation is at the west end of the elevation.
Okay.
So it will have some visibility, but not as much as the one on the north elevation, which is at the east end. So we're just looking for your direction on that so that we don't have to, we just be more efficient in reviewing the signs and not having to come again for that.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thanks. Tara, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Margaret, I was just wondering if you could repeat the current requirements around the signs for the existing Hollymead Shopping Center, if you could repeat that.
Sure. What, get back. What I did was point out what the differences are. The comprehensive sign plan calls for channel letters with red faces mounted directly to the wall. Those channel letters would be face lit. What's being proposed is looks like channel letters on a background panel. The channel letters are not in the faces are not in the right color, and they've got both face lit and halo lighting.
That's great. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
All right, thanks. I do not have any questions for staff. So if the applicant is ready to make a presentation.
Yeah, this is Steve McRae with Kinley Horn. I'll share my screen here. Let's see here. Okay, can you all see that? Yes, so this is Steve McRae with Kinley Horn, joined by Ryan Perkins, also with Kinley Horn. I know Eugene Thompson, the lead architect with Ionic Design, is also on this call. And I can't tell from my screen, but Jason Horn might also be on this call as a developer. We really don't have too much more to add on top of Margaret's presentation. Thankfully, hers was very nice and detailed. We did receive y'all's summary of recommendations, and we would like to go through a few of those and ask you all a few questions, if you all wouldn't mind.
Sure, thank you.
Let's see here. And Ryan, feel free to jump in here if you'd like.
Yeah, no problem. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Margaret, again. So yeah, like I said, we do have Eugene on today, and I think he can help with some of these architecturally related comments. Just quickly going through the site comments, just to knock those off the list. And sorry, I'll skip around. I'll probably start from the bottom. So number 9, adding the tree protection fencing to make sure that all the trees along the entrance corridor are safe from construction activities. That's no problem. We can do that. For number 8, for the planting size for the Mount Vernon, Margaret, are you just thinking like an 18-inch to 24-inch call out will be better than saying 24 inches?
Yeah, it just seemed like it would be easier to get something that's shorter, 12 inches, 18 inches.
Okay. That's certainly fine on our side, so we can do that. The lighting plans, just making sure everything is noted as bronze. We can do that as well. The light poles and the fixtures will note as being bronze. So that's number 6. And I guess we'll have a discussion about the metal tube feature, but yeah, if we stick with the lighting as part of the metal tubes at the top of the glow, then we'll see if we can get that worked into the photometric plan that we provide. Number 5, just the standard note about the mechanical equipment being shielded or eliminated. We're fine with that as always. Eugene can speak to this, but the screen wall elevation, yeah, adding the existing windows, I don't see that as being a problem. You can probably note it in the plan view as well as add a photo of what's existing.
Yeah, we just didn't have the exact location of those, so we can, at least for this purposes, we can place them approximately and say exact location to be determined.
So those are really the only site-related comments that were on here. I guess we'll jump back to the top and discuss the metal tubes and the drive-through tower colors. Eugene, do you have initial thoughts on swapping colors on this site and swapping the metal tube color?
Well, I would agree with you that doing the darker color starts to dominate that wall. I guess I was under the understanding that these tubes weren't necessarily approved. So that's when we switched to the other panels. But we could certainly go back to these and use these as a standard if that's the desire of the board. We did not have a light included in that piece on our current design, so they were not to be illuminated.
Just to jump in, actually not illuminating them would be more consistent with ARB's past policy.
Yeah. Stephen, can you jump back to the elevations, the second tab?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. So you were asking about the metal tubes as well as the drive-through tower?
Yeah, I think from at least I understand my comments that Margaret made was that the tower material seemed like it was going to match and everything, but maybe that when we added those same kind of panels to where the tubes are going to be, or change the tube colors, I guess, that became maybe a little bit too dominant. Is that my understanding of the comment? So
Yes.
we could certainly go back, but it would probably need to be more of the red, since that is their kind of the standard color, I would think. And then if I was to comment on the signage, though that's not in my scope there. If I understood also the signage comments, wouldn't we have a signage probably above those tubes? Wasn't that what the recommendation was?
It was sounding like that the sign package that may have been submitted had some signage above the tubes per that photo of the Chipotle, that different Chipotle. But I don't think we have any signage, or we don't show any signage on that face, obviously on this drawing right here.
Yeah, so if you look at that top view there of the east view, I think the comment was that signage there is probably going to be difficult to see. So if we use the one on the south elevation and then we move the one from the east over to the opposite, over to the west, maybe on that long wall of where the ephes is, then that might be a better representation of where the signage could go.
I did not follow that. I'm not sure if everyone else did.
Oh, okay. So signage located on the south elevation, keep that where it's located. And then the one on the top, the east elevation, since that's going to be a little bit more challenging for visibility, move that one down to the west elevation above where the tubes are located.
Just to be clear, the issue of visibility is not that we're not trying to make your signs more visible. You're wanting them to be. The issue was if the ARB felt like the proposed location was had such limited visibility, then they might not have a problem with the sign type being something other than what was previously approved.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I'll defer to the sign gods for all of that. Just making a suggestion that it might be a better location for purposes to put it there.
And just to, so the sign applications that came in last week, it looks like the location proposed for what is called the west elevation on this drawing is at the left end of that wall.
Okay. So you're saying the bottom elevation here, we're calling the west here, that faces Target. So the ARB board does not want to see signage along that face.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the sign type and the sign design should match the comprehensive sign criteria that have already been approved for this shopping center.
Okay.
So if you put it on the south and you put it on the west, you need to comply.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Well, in this drawing, if you put it on the east or west, it needs to comply. And I apologize, we didn't actually let any of the ARB members talk about that in that discussion.
All right, well, I guess if there's any questions for the applicant, Tara, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. No.
Frank, any questions for the applicant?
No, I don't have any questions.
All right, thanks. I guess, and my question would be related to the sign, and I guess it doesn't sound like the representative who would actually know about the sign specifically is here, so I might just save that for later. We'll go to if there are any members of the public who would like to comment. Are there any members of the public who would like
No, not at this time.
All right, thank you. So we will now go into discussion. Tara, do you have any comments?
I had a couple of thoughts about this. In general, I thank the applicant for working with staff and with the board in previous iterations of this drawing or this building. I would say that as far as the issue of the color of the tube wall and the drive-through tower go, that it seems like there is precedent for that color to be matching. It looked like it was pretty close to the dark Chipotle pepper icon as a part of the signage, that it would be similar to that color. I think something of that sort probably matches more closely to the, I think that there's a bit of visible something in a loading dock area in the adjacent building, that there's precedent within the shopping center for some sort of element of that color. So, you know, if color is a concern, I think that that's one way that the applicant could certainly go. And as far as the sign goes, I do agree that it's not exactly in keeping with the comprehensive sign plan as previously approved. But I also don't, just having a glance around at some of the other signs in that area, it does seem that there are at least red signs with different lighting methods, but are fairly similar to the one, in my opinion, similar to the ones that are proposed. So I wouldn't necessarily find this too far from the previously approved comprehensive sign plan is sort of my first instinct. So those are my comments, and thank you also to Margaret for putting together the presentation and for setting this all up. So I'd pass it on to my other board members.
Okay, thanks a lot. Frank, do you have any comments?
Yes, thanks, Taro. And thank you to the applicant and Margaret for your presentations. A few thoughts. I think given, if you're thinking about this from the corridor, given the grade change, given the extensive landscaping, and within that, the evergreen trees, then you add on the fact that you're keeping that existing screen wall and adding on to it. I don't know that this has that big of an impact on the entrance corridor. And another point, you're shrinking the building, which I think is a good thing. as far as if you're just thinking about how this building sits on the corridor. So, I think it's a nice site plan. I think it's a nice kind of reinvigoration of this out parcel. So I appreciate that, and think it's definitely an appropriate use building on the corridor. I agree with Taro on the signage. I did the same thing, kind of glanced around. I think maybe the big difference is that red panel that the Chipotle letters kind of stand on top of or in front of. I don't know how that all works together, but there's definitely precedent for white letters. So, and then since it is a red color, it doesn't seem to be that far off from what's, other buildings in the development currently have. So maybe that's just guidance, Margaret. I don't know. I'd like to see like the full package and have all the information, but it doesn't seem that far off initially. And that's really all I have. I think it's a nice application. It's very similar to what the initial site plan was. And so, thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. I actually agree with what both of my colleagues said. I think to echo Frank's point, I think the existing landscaping, the extension of that existing screen wall kind of make this a very, the only way you would see this building from the corridor at least is very obliquely. So I think that kind of takes a lot of pressure off what's being done. I think the move to reduce the top heavy appearance of the building was great. And I agree with what Tara said about the color. I think there is precedent for that. And I don't really have a problem with the color. I'd say, I think actually with the tubes, what appears to be kind of like blank areas of very dark color on the elevation, I think in reality, just because of the tubes, which are kind of proud of the background, would have a lot more interest than is kind of appears from the elevation itself. So I don't really have any comments beyond what the staff recommendations are. I think as far as the signage, once again, it's pretty low impact, and I tend to agree with my colleagues that I don't see the proposed signage as a big issue. So if we could get I guess the recommended motion, we could maybe.
I need the applicant to stop sharing the screen so I can share mine. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody have anything they'd like to adjust about the recommended action?
You are seeing the Word document, right? So the first comment in the list is about the color of the metal tubes in the drive-through tower metal. It is worded as a consider, not a requirement.
Yeah, I noted that, and I did not have a problem with the color, and but considering that it says consider, I did not have a problem with that particular action. If there's any other changes, if not, if anybody would like to make a motion, we could.
Sorry, just point out one other.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And number 10 is about the signs, and I did add what's showing up in red here. But it sounds like you all are okay with those sign designs, or
I think in this situation, I personally am comfortable with what's proposed. If Tara and Frank are in agreement, we could maybe take that away.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
That if we could just clarify that, like for this particular site, that the difference in the design as compared to the approved comprehensive sign plan is because the reduced visibility from the entrance corridor. I think that makes total.
Yeah.
If we sort of get beyond that, I think we need further discussion, and we could do that at another time.
Right. No, and I think the reduced visibility is the key here.
Margaret, one question: if we strike this item, will we still see the application for the sign, or will you see it and you'll just review it given, with this information? Can we just take it out of this review and then have it be a separate thing?
If we leave in separate applications are required for wall and freestanding signs, that just clarifies that they still need to come in. We'll still review them. Other things may change with those applications. So we'll just keep an eye on it and make sure that it's consistent with what you've discussed today.
Okay.
I guess the one thing that comes to mind for the second element, if metal tubes are to be illuminated, since the applicant is not proposing to illuminate those metal tubes, should we modify this somehow?
Yes.
Well, is that correct, Eugene? If we go back to the metal tubes versus the panel, would the metal tubes need to be illuminated? Is that like the standard?
No, it would not have to be.
Okay.
And was there also a comment about the color of the tubes? I think someone said they didn't mind. Is it wanting to be the red, or is it wanting to be the bronze kind of color?
I had written down red. That's what I heard.
So I had suggested, if the color is an issue, that I think that going about it with that darker red and the Chipotle logo or something similar to the precedents we had been shown would be a good way of dealing with that. I also don't have a super strong feeling on the color one way or the other. So I think consider language, as Chris had mentioned earlier, is about as strong as I feel about it personally.
Can I make a suggestion? I don't know if I'm able to at this point or not, but being that the red tubes are part of their brand, and if the board doesn't have any inclination one way or the other, then it might be a better conducive fit for the branding to go with that red, if that is acceptable.
That was kind of what I was considering, is just that it would both be compatible with the rest of the shopping center and seems to be compatible with the branding. So it seemed mutually agreeable.
Just to clarify, the red color is just for the tubes or for both the tubes and the drive-through?
Tubes only.
Do the other members have an opinion on it? I guess my thought is, if the tubes are the thing that brought up the question of the drive-through tower, that resolving the tube issue returns us to the previously approved tower color, but I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I guess for me personally, that doesn't really change my thinking. I was kind of basing my comment on what was shown in the most recent submittal, but I think red, as you pointed out, is there's precedent for that as well. And I think that would be appropriate also.
When we say red, is it basically the color that's in the architectural drawings package, that it's the last page that says approach? And it has a picture of an existing Chipotle. Is that the color red that we're talking about?
Are you describing those concept pieces, I think, that the presentation included?
Yeah, the architectural drawings package, it's just 3 sheets. And that third sheet is like an 8.5 by 11 image. Yes,
Correct.
that's red. That's what we're talking about.
Correct.
Correct. When you say red.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I'm
it does
fine.
correspond with the Chipotle colors. So it's to be specific on the color of red.
Okay.
So based on that discussion, I added the brand red for the tubes is acceptable to number 1. Does that work for everyone?
Yeah, that works for me. All right. Any other comments or tweaks? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move for approval of the certificate of appropriateness for ARB-2022-32 Chipotle final site plan with the comments listed in the staff report amended as follows. Item number 1, add the sentence, the brand red for the tubes is acceptable. Item number 2, amend to read, clarify on the plans that the metal tubes will not be eliminated. And strike item number 10 completely. Oh no, excuse me. Strike a large portion of item number 10 with just the first sentence to remain.
All
I'll
right,
second that.
great. If we could go to a vote.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Mitsuno,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we have one work session today, which will be presented by Margaret Malashevsky and Mariah Gleason. Are you ready with your presentation?
Bring it up. Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So it's been a while since we discussed the guidelines update, so I thought I would just give a brief overview of what's been done and where we are in the process. So for a long time, both staff and ARB members have wanted to provide design guidelines that are specific to individual corridors to better address the different contexts and the different characters of those various streets. And this work has been delayed for a variety of reasons, but primarily due to the difficulty of scheduling time for a full update to the design guidelines, just given workload and competing priorities. So in 2019, we thought that we would try to break down the work into smaller pieces so that we could start making at least little bits of progress along the way. And we started looking at historic precedents as a path towards clarifying how the guidelines or how the ARB is interpreting the guidelines. And some of that work continued into 2020. And then in 2021, we divided the corridors up among ARB members, and you all started traveling the corridors to document the character and the context. And we started with the corridors in the western part of the county. And this is a list of the corridors that ARB members have already visited and reported back on. So that's Route 250 West, Route 151, the western part of the interstate, Route 240, and 29 business in the bypass. At first, with that work, findings were presented in PowerPoint format with maps and street views, and interspersed in the presentations and the discussions about them was conversation about how information would ultimately be formatted. And we started referring to these addenda as one-pagers. And then we gave some very basic examples of how that information might be displayed in a single page format. And we drafted an outline of the information that should be included in those one-pagers. And then we transitioned to a different template for pulling that information together. And this led to additional discussion about the format of the template and what might be needed for corridors. As ARB members were traveling the corridors and pulling this information together, it became obvious that some of the corridors had a lot fewer buildings than other corridors did, or the corridors that are some are more focused on landscape than on architectural detail. And then in some cases, there would be a single building or a single site that is a really good example of multiple characteristics of things that we had wanted to identify. So we brought Mariah on board to help us with this one-pager design format. And just as a quick little background, Mariah joined the county in 2018, and she was promoted to the position of urban designer in 2021. It has taken some time to transition Mariah into the urban design work just because of all the other important work that she does for the planning division in addition to that urban design work. And we still have limited time, a limited portion of Mariah's time for this project, but I am happy today to have Mariah here with us to share with us this template work that she's done for those one-pagers. And so from here, I've got Mariah's work in this PowerPoint. So I'm going to pull up first of the templates that she's worked on and just turn it over to Mariah to talk to us about what she's put together.
Yeah, Margaret, thank you for the introduction and thank you for having me. It's been exciting to go back and hear and look at what everybody's been finding along the corridors and just learn about the unique history of each of our corridors in the county. And the attributes and ways those aspects can inform a more robust and definable character as these corridors continue to develop. I think it's very obvious that there are some tensions between the one size fits all approach for the entrance corridors, and it isn't always the appropriate solution. So I think this work is really timely and exciting to be doing. So yeah, when just in looking at kind of a test fit and mock-up, we thought we would start with a mock-up of a corridor layout and then a mock-up of a segment layout, because I think each of you all were very thoughtful and conscious about breaking these corridors down into definable segments if they were longer corridors, and just acknowledging that in a 22-mile stretch, they might have different aspects to them. So the entrance corridor that we started with was the Route 250 West, and the first segment being the Afton Mountain segment, which is the westernmost segment of this particular corridor. So the first mock-up is the corridor layout, and just to explain the elements contained here, it's a large title just naming the entrance corridor, and then a subheading underneath it that defines the terminating points in the intersections. And then there's a key map at the top left. And then from there, it goes down to the information that's contained on this would be the history, what is its development pattern, the general, or how, I guess, what is the history that's associated with this in particular, like 64 might be, it has a very different history than like another one of our, like Route 29, which has a different characteristic than, is it Criticers? The one with Blue Mountain Brewery on it, that little segment. So just kind of acknowledging that the general characteristics of progression, and that's for these larger corridors that kind of go from a very urban or a very rural to a very urban, just kind of delineating what is the general progression that one would experience as they enter into the county. The zoning and land use was also something that was brought up in a lot of the presentations. We know these aspects might change, and we don't want this aspect to date the entrance corridor, but just to give a general overview of, there are some legacy zonings where there are different commercial areas along the way. So like in this particular example, that would be the Ivy Corner area where there's just kind of this little village, and or in a Crozet where the pattern of development gets more dense and then it gets less dense again, just acknowledging those things. And then the length. So I built these out as spreads. You're going to see them right now as pages. So that might be a talking point in terms of, do we see this in a printed fashion and online as a spread or as individual pages? So going to the next page, that last sheet would be the right side or the left side, and this sheet would be the right side. So you'd have the big map of the entire corridor highlighted and its segments named out. And then in this, you would have a little segment map that just defines the segment name and then the description of it, so that you can look from the whole corridor and see how each piece and each segment fits into the larger corridor. And we're thinking that these descriptions would be a balance between descriptive and inspirational, so that it kind of provides some, it has some connotation to it that is motivating in some ways. And then going to the next slide, if you will, Margaret, this is an example of what a segment would look like. So it takes that title and names the segment. It grays out the rest of it, so you can still kind of follow, you know, what corridor each of these is tied to, but it just kind of continues the line item, again laying out the where the segment terminates, the key map, using a box to display where along that segment, or where along the corridor, excuse me, this segment exists. The map again, highlighting where on the corridor it exists, and it zooming in so you can kind of see the development pattern just in the aerial. But it's not so, for this one in particular, it's not going to, I don't think they're going to be the same scale, because some of them are different lengths. This one is 3 miles. There might be some that are a mile. So I don't know that we want all of those to be at the same scale, but that could be a talking point. And the information contained here is using that methodology. What I found in the presentations was that there was already this summarizing of what the important takeaways were. So, and I think it's important that we still continue to use that methodology and just have everybody have the same evaluation criteria, and as we approach each of the corridors and segments, so we don't have one person that's only looking at A, B, and C, while person 2 is looking at X, Y, and Z, but that everybody is considering aspects A through Z, and then through that, the cream rises to the top in terms of what is most often seen. So we've laid this out in historic use patterns. There are some of these corridors that have a historic categorization assigned to them, and we'll want to kind of acknowledge that. General characteristics would be that same descriptive inspirational comment or language, so that it's, if people are just, if a applicant or developer is just navigating to the page that they need, that they don't miss that inspirational text. And then we've divided it into structures landscape, unifying elements that might not fit into either or, but they might be overarching. And then characteristics to avoid. I think in some of the presentations, there was this question about, you know, what do we, maybe there are things that we acknowledge, but we don't want to see them continue to move forward. In this corridor in particular, it was that many of the structures on the corridor predate the entrance corridor guidelines. So just it leaves room to acknowledge those things. And then the precedent images at the bottom kind of lay out in a way that we can describe their location and then their significance to the corridor. So in like 3 lines, they don't have to use all 3 lines, but it's there if we need it. So this is laid out with a couple of precedent images. So there's a square and then kind of a landscape, but then there's, if we could go to the next page, like Margaret was saying with this, sometimes there are many examples and sometimes there are a few examples. This kind of precedent image would be kind of a rollover sheet, that if there were a lot of precedent images, we still leave some space and some organization to having those extra images. And this was just kind of a play with a gridded system. Those can plug and play in any way. It's just utilizing a grid-like layout, but we can fill it however best fits the photo and information we're trying to convey. And if we could go to the next slide. Acknowledging that some of these corridors don't have a lot of contributing structures for one reason or another. This was an example of where if there's only one precedent image, it gives more room to show that image and then describe it on the right hand side, but then it still maintains a lot of the aspects that we did before, and some of this is just filler text. So that's the kind of layout we were looking at for the corridor, the segment with a lot of information, and with that might not have a lot of precedent images. But I guess I've done a lot of talking. The first question would kind of be, you know, as both users on the development side and evaluators on the ARB side, is there elements, are there elements that are missing that would be helpful? Or does this template look good? What do you think?
I guess I'll start. I personally, I think this template's great. Doing a couple of these presentations, it's really hard to grapple with the amount of information and the kind of variety of conditions that you see along some of these corridors, and kind of a one size fits all is definitely not appropriate. It seems like this format at least gives you a lot of flexibility to expand where expansion is possible or warranted. Like to take 250, for example, you know, there's probably more buildings between the, you know, city of Charlottesville border and say, you know, the 250 bypass than there might be like in the next several miles of road. So there's a lot of variety, and I think a lot of these corridors are going to have that. So I applaud your effort to continue trying to distill all of this information into a format that is relatively consistent, but able to, you know, expand or contract based on the character of the segment that you're talking about. So,
Thank you.
Frank or Taro have any comments? Go for it.
I agree, Chris. Mariah, Margaret, I think this is great. I think it's really nice graphic design, very legible and thoughtful, and adaptable. Just off the top of my head, I was trying to think, you said, asked if there was anything missing. I wonder if there's any, like, do we do like related documents? But then I was thinking like small area plans or like Rio 29, but that might be an outlier because it's kind of, not requiring ARB. But anything else you guys are working on or the county's working on that's would be relevant to development on one of these corridors. So that might be something to add. But no, I think it's great. I think it could be a one-sheeter, but I think you're right. I think there's going to be times where we're going to need more than one sheet to supplement images or supplement structures. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really terrific work. I just would echo the comments of my fellow board members. And I guess the one thing which seems like you've thought about it, I mean, there's a lot of thought that went into the work that you all have already produced. I guess the one thing as somebody who would potentially use this document to either prepare a submission or to review a submission, that I think that looking at each corridor section, like for instance, the Afton Mountain segment, just ensuring that whatever information, at least my initial instinct would be that this section would be the thing that I would turn to if I were trying to prepare a submission or to review it. So just ensuring that all of the general requirements and pieces that we would refer to would be included here, and that the front section would be sort of for context, but not necessarily things that we'd need to be pulling from. But again, it sounded like you're already thinking in that direction. So
yeah, that was kind of that was what we were trying to accomplish by having that contextual piece. That was exactly it. That it was a larger context, and that if you were a development team, that you could go to a specific numbered sheet and say, oh, I see what I need to do here. And then if I want more information, I can go and see how it relates to everything else.
yeah, seems great. Thank you. Thank you for presenting it.
Thanks.
Great. Mariah, do you want me to jump to my next slide, or did you have other questions or comments right now?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. So thank you for those comments. That's all very helpful. So it sounds like the template format looks good. I'll make sure that I get in touch with the ARB members who are not here today, make sure they look over this and see if they have any other comments to add. But since it sounds like we have at least a majority who's good with this format, I think what we'd like to do next, then you've probably noticed that a lot of the text on those sheets was not real text. So we want to take one of the segments and really do it completely, and just take that test to the end, make sure it's all working well, and then bring that back to you for review, and then continue to do that with the corridors that have already been done. And so hopefully we'll just be able to over the next few months, just sort of work our way through those and get those to you. What you're looking at here is a list of the corridors that have yet to be surveyed. So we're also just wondering if we can get confirmation, are ARB members still interested in continuing that survey work and bringing that information back so that we can transition it into the templates. We've got a few, you see a few highlighted there. Those were ones that had been assigned to Fred, who is no longer on the board. So Tara, hopefully we can bring you in on this. so, I mean, so those are the questions really. We've confirmed that the template looks good. I think I saw some nods there. Board members are still willing to continue to do the survey work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. You know, maybe we could probably reshuffle the assignments to considering, make sure everybody is still has the time and willing to take on, I guess it would be good to start at least with an equal distribution, but based on, folks' availability and all that, we could, maybe trade back and forth or handle
Sure.
it some other way.
Maybe, so what I would like to do is to get one template more complete for our next meeting and maybe have everyone look at that and then consider that, how the information is going into that. And then we can look at this list again and sort of reassign and go from there. Does that sound good?
That would be great. Yeah.
One thought, is it helpful for us to prepare these presentations and then for staff to kind of take that and then put it in? Or is that harder? If they're like, well, he said this, but it's wrong, or it doesn't really do a job with this. So is there a way we work with staff maybe that's more efficient? I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to do these presentations. I just don't want to like create more work where
Right.
we're not helping.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Mariah, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like when you went back and listened to them, it was helpful because people were sort of summarizing their finding. However, I don't want you to waste time putting it into a format that we're not going to use. So we talked about coming up with a more streamlined format that's more consistent with the template we have now. That maybe you could just use, as a Word document or something that's more simple to plop your information into, because Mariah's using.
Yeah. I wonder if it's, and I don't know if we could do it outside of this meeting, but does it make sense for like a board member to be assigned or still have these assignments, but then you work with planner or you, Margaret, and have a meeting to share your findings as a board member and kind of get on the same page with the planner. And then this group brings it to the overall board. Maybe it's in the format done versus like a separate PowerPoint that then planning staff is like, they went off on a tangent over here and it doesn't make as much sense, but.
Yeah, well, I think you all brought up some really good questions while you were considering each of the corridors. And I think there was an aspect of, there was a lot of thinking that went into that survey of each one. But when you're then going to take a segment that's, in this example, 22 miles long, you have a little bit of time to speak on it. What were people naturally came up with the most relevant aspects first. So I think there is an element of sitting with it, but maybe it does turn into more of like an interview kind of thing where we just kind of diagram it out together after the ARB member has kind of done the research. And that way we're capturing maybe those moments that staff is like, oh, well, I saw this also when I drove it. Did you see that? Do you think that's important? And there's kind of almost a group activity going on, and there's not a, well, the board member said this, but staff doesn't really agree, or staff said this and the board member doesn't agree. That's already being worked out in the process with that kind of interview collaborative aspect. But yeah, maybe there are different formats of getting to this this end result with less work on everybody's part.
Yeah, I think we can make that work. Sounds good.
Not trying to get out of any work. I'm happy to do either format or both.
I do like the idea that we would have a chance to check in with staff and just make sure we're on the same page. That seems pretty valuable, so.
Yeah, right. Especially on any that I do. It's better to have it checked over.
Well, I've never done one of these before too, so I would love the opportunity to work with somebody else to just make sure it's up to snuff with whatever has been produced previously, so, you know.
Sure. Tara, I think I may send you a few links to previous, to recordings of previous meetings where like maybe 1 or 2 presentations were done, and that'll just give you a better idea of what was done in the past, and just give you more context for that.
Yeah, well, and in either case, I'm happy to help out. This sounds exciting and valuable, so I'm looking forward to helping out with surveying and any other work that needs to be done on this.
Great. That's terrific. We're so glad to hear it. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
We're very excited to be making progress on this. So thank you all for your help.
It looks really good.
Great. Thanks, Mariah. Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think that's good on that topic for today.
And just to clarify, were those the only remaining surveys? Are they the only survey assignments that have yet to be done, or the only surveys that have yet to be done, or what's the?
That last list that I showed that had 3 yellow highlighted areas. The highlights, the whole list is yet to be done. The yellow highlights had previously been assigned to an A or B member whose place you took.
Great. Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
All right, well, great. So other business. We're down to approval of the May 2nd minutes. Would anybody like to move to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of May 2nd.
All right. I will second the May 2nd. If we could go for a vote.
All right, Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Matsuno.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. The next ARB meeting is scheduled for June 6th. And that actually may or may not be a in-person meeting. We will find out when the Board of Supervisors meet on the 18th, I think. So we will keep everyone posted on that. Tara and Frank, are you both planning on being at that one?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Great. And I guess we'll find out from David and Frank also by email. Are there any other items anyone would like to discuss? All right, well, in that case, I will adjourn the meeting until Monday, June 6th. Time is 2:08 p.m. And I'll see everyone on the 6th, either electronically or in person.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a
Thanks,
lot.
everybody.
See you next time.
Bye.